All right, welcome to this explainer. Today we're taking a pretty fascinating 3D-styled journey into the reality of ancient attractiveness. We're going to look way past those dusty museum dioramas and fossilized bones to ask a highly unusual question about our ancestors. Okay, let's dive into this. So imagine someone who spent yesterday hunting mammoths and scraping animal hides just walks past you on the street today. Could they actually get a right swipe? We're talking about genuine human attraction here. Could an extinct relative ever be considered genuinely, conventionally good-looking by our modern standards? It's a wild thought, right? So here's our roadmap for this little time travel trip. First, the makeover illusion. Then, Homo sapiens, just like us. 3, Neanderthals at different geometry. 4, Homo erectus, the familiarity limit. And finally, the boundary of attraction. Starting off with Section 1, the makeover illusion. Anatomy versus presentation. Okay, the first major concept we absolutely have to grasp here is the vast, and I mean literally vast difference between someone's biological anatomy and their modern presentation. See, when we say ancient human, we kind of just assume attractiveness is this fixed biological measurement, but it's really not. Think about it. Modern people alter their hair, skin, teeth, and scent before they even eat breakfast. A body that's praised in one century can be totally criticized in another, only to make a comeback 20 years later, usually bundled with an expensive skincare subscription. So just because someone is covered in prehistoric dirt, that doesn't mean they're biologically unattractive. Just look at these 3 steps of what we might call an archaeological miracle. If you take an ancient person who smells like, well, smoke and animal fat, and you give them some basic medical care, a hot shower, a fresh haircut, and throw some modern fitted clothes on them, honestly, much of that primitive appearance just washes right down the drain. A simple shower completely changes our entire perception of an ancient face. Moving on to Section 2, Homo sapiens, just like us, looking between 5,000 and 30,000 years ago. Let's move to our ancient timeline and see how this builds. We're starting on the far left, looking at a Bronze Age farmer from about 5,000 years ago, and an Ice Age hunter from 30,000 years ago, before we journey even further back into deep time. Now, if you put a Bronze Age herder in jeans and a jacket today, you wouldn't identify him by some mysterious ancient energy radiating from his cheekbones. You just notice the physical realities of his daily grind. His lean muscle, that came from literal daily survival and hard labor, not knocking out 3 sets near a gym mirror. You definitely see sun damage, calloused hands, maybe some healed scars, because remember, wounds had to heal without antibiotics back then. And hey, while they definitely didn't have conditioner, they absolutely understood presentation. They used combs, razors, bone pins, and pigments for some pretty elaborate hairstyles and body decoration. When you actually compare these ancient traits with modern aesthetics, it completely reframes our standard of beauty. Think about their crazy good cardiovascular fitness. An Ice Age adult surviving winter and hauling supplies was easily hitting 10,000 steps, and they didn't even have a motivational playlist. And what about their teeth? Sure, they were worn down from a tough, gritty diet. They chipped and cracked. But let's be real, most modern teeth aren't perfectly white and aligned either, at least not before modern dentistry started its massive PR campaign. In a lot of ways, those ancient scars and calluses would fit perfectly into today's highly sought-after, rugged beauty standards. But remember this quote: attractiveness is never only anatomy. A skull does not smile, it doesn't make eye contact, change expression, move rhythmically, or speak confidently. A 3D skull reconstruction is completely missing the most attractive element of being human, which is dynamic expression. 2 artists can take the exact same skull and produce faces that look like distant cousins, all based on whether they make the person look filthy and exhausted or give them clear skin and suspiciously professional eyebrows. Attraction really happens when someone laughs or speaks confidently, not when they're just staring blankly out of a forensic reconstruction. All right, Section 3, Neanderthals, a different geometry. We're talking 40,000 years ago now. We are now jumping 40,000 years back, and you need to prepare for a major shift in biological expectations. And this brilliantly illustrates the difference. Compare our modern facial geometry on the left, the high rounded skull and vertical forehead, with the robust 3D structure of a Neanderthal face on the right. A Neanderthal had this long, low skull, a heavy projecting brow ridge above the eyes, a midface that really pushed forward, and a super weak or even totally absent chin. Plus, their noses were markedly taller. The geometry is just entirely different. But listen, we have to completely dismantle that hunched, furry, ugly caveman trope right here, right now. They were absolutely not ape-like creatures. Their bodies were incredible adaptations to harsh, freezing environments. They were generally short, broad, and powerfully built with these really robust limbs. So a living Neanderthal wouldn't look like a tall, slender fashion model. They look more like an unusually compact strength athlete specifically designed by winter. They'd communicate this incredible physical power just by moving naturally. And that brings us to a really fascinating quote. Beauty has always depended on the available faces. Change the population, and the average changes. Familiarity totally dictates beauty. A Neanderthal wouldn't look like an ugly modern human, they would just look like a different kind of human. Think about it. If Neanderthals had survived right beside us into the present day, going to our schools, starring in films, running in politics, our whole concept of a normal face would include them. Modern beauty industries would just develop separate contouring tutorials for projecting mid-faces, and dating apps would literally just add different filters for them. Which brings us to Section 4, Homo erectus, the familiarity limit. Let's go 2 million years back. We are traveling deep in time now, nearly 2 million years back, approaching the very limits of human familiarity. Just imagine this scenario. If they were dressed from behind, a Homo erectus might appear broadly human, with pretty efficient, upright proportions. But the second they turn around, wow, you're hit with a really jarring contrast. It's a perfectly familiar body beneath the neck, paired with a distinctly archaic, ancient skull right above it. Let's map out this 3D facial universe. You're looking at a strong, continuous brow ridge, a very low forehead, a heavily projecting face, large jaws, absolutely no modern chin to speak of, and a smaller, differently shaped brain case. Obviously, modern dating standards, which are so built around clear chins and high foreheads, would not treat these features kindly today. But honestly, calling them unattractive is fundamentally unfair because they thrived by their own standards. Attraction existed millions of years before anyone could describe a jawline using mathematical percentages, right? Finally, Section 5, the boundary of attraction, looking at Australopithecus and beyond. We have officially arrived at the absolute boundary where human attraction completely breaks down. And it all comes down to a psychological phenomenon called familiarity processing. See, our brains process faces relative to what we've already seen. We find averageness attractive simply because familiar configurations are incredibly easy for our brains to process. So when you go way back to hominins like Australopithecus, who had these deep jaws, broad cheekbones, and ape-like cranial proportions, their 3D geometry is just too alien. It triggers a sense of strangeness in our brains before careful judgment even has a chance to occur. So, if you take away anything from this explainer, here is the core thesis. The dividing line of attraction isn't about dirt, it isn't body hair, it's not even age. It is entirely about how far the face has moved from the modern human template stored neurologically inside our brains. Recent ancient people, they sit comfortably inside that template. Neanderthals kind of sit right on the edge of it. But older hominins cross into a category that our minds literally process as another kind of creature entirely. So, the crucial point is we actually need to turn the mirror back on ourselves. We always assume our features are universally beautiful because, well, everyone we compare ourselves to has them. But picture this. Inside a Homo erectus community, where every single trusted, healthy adult displayed robust brows and large jaws, our prized modern features would look absolutely bizarre. To them, your high-rounded forehead wouldn't look elegant or refined. It would probably look weak, juvenile, or just strangely inflated. Which leaves us with this final, pretty provocative thought. We've spent this whole time wondering if we would date them. But if beauty is entirely dependent on the available faces and attraction is heavily gated by what a population recognizes as normal, if you traveled back in time, would ancient humans consider you attractive? It's a profound reminder of just how deep and how incredibly subjective our standards of beauty truly are. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning what you think you know.